Okay, so let's start our wonderful workshop 3 that we are on the halfway of our journey to launch the app in 45 days. The session for today will be focused on testing, feedback, and refining your MVP for a successful launch. We will have with us from the technical team Banu and Kushan that they will take over of the and will take care of the workshop content. But before we go into the session of today, I'm very happy to share with all of you that we have two guests with us. So we have Alia Marin, that is the feature editor and entrepreneur Middle East. Thank you, Alia, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So thank you very much. The reason why we invite Alia to be here today with us is because we have as a guest Adam Saidi, is the principal product manager at Kafu. So that I'm almost sure that by now everybody has heard about Kafu. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
So we are very lucky. So that's it is our two guests today that they will have a conversation before we start. So I think that is a great opportunity for all of us to hear more about Kafu and the work that you do at Kafu, that you can share with us your insight, your expertise, your knowledge. If you can give us tips, that will be also great. So that's it. And after we will move into the workshop. So I don't want to delay more because we are all very excited to hear the conversation between both of you. So I will mute myself, and Alia, you can kick off.
No problemo. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, everyone who's joining us today. Like Carmen mentioned, I'm Alia. I'm the features editor at Entrepreneur Middle East, and I will primarily be your moderator today. Our main guest today is, in fact, Adam Zaidi, who is the head of product at Kafu. Like Carmen mentioned earlier, by this point, most of us should know what Kafu is, but if in case you are unaware, Kafu is a fuel delivery and vehicle services platform that was launched in the UAE in 2018. It created quite a buzz when it did. I was here and I remember all of it. But just so you know, just for the uninitiated in the audience, Adam, if you would like to very briefly just let our guests, our viewers today know about the apps that Kafu offers very quickly, please.
Sure. So yes, as Alia rightly mentioned, Cafu is challenging the way that we maintain our day-to-day vehicle services, whether it's fuel delivery, electric charging, car washes, battery changes, tire changes, oil servicing, and so on. And so as a platform, we're effectively operating like you would expect other last mile delivery companies to operate, but we service your car at your location. So with that allows sort of three main channels or products that we use to engage with customers. I think the primary channel that we have is our mobile application for end customers, or our B2C application that allows all customers to place on-demand orders, very quickly and seamlessly. We have now created an extension of that same mobile application to cater for small to medium enterprises with respect to their fleet servicing needs. And so we cater different services based on those small to medium sized fleets, and have different service offerings that we can avail to them, as well as different billing considerations as well. And then finally, we have our web enterprise application. So this is for our large size fleets that we're servicing, how they manage their fleets, what information they need on a day-to-day basis. And of course, the fact that we are typically servicing them on a reoccurring basis, that is sort of a separate web app. So we have one mobile app catering for two very different user groups, and then our web app catering for our large enterprises.
All right, perfect. I think with that, we can sort of jump into the conversation that we have slated for today. Adam, over the years that I've been at Entrepreneur Middle East, I've had the chance to speak with different tech entrepreneurs, and something, a bit of a common thread between what all of them say, especially the ones who bring their business ideas onto apps, is if you feel like your app is perfect when you've launched it, then it's too late. And that for me was like, it's a bit of a mindset shift, which because primarily what that means is it's okay for you to launch your app when it's a little imperfect. How important do you think it is for entrepreneurs to sort of not just imbibe this mindset? How does it help them in terms of iterations of their app as well?
Yes, I think that's an amazing point. So if one thing I would say, whether you're building a new feature, a new service, a new application, is there's a lot of pressure. And of
Mm,
course, you definitely want to get it right. But I think getting it right versus getting it perfect is extreme. Those are two very, very different things. And so we feel this pressure that, it needs to realize its intended result. It needs to shock the market as soon as it's out there. That's actually not true. What it needs to do is work. So by work, what I mean is it satisfies the problem that you're trying to solve or the use case. It caters for the audience that you think you're trying to cater for, and it allows for a certain level of completeness for that task or that service or that offering. So that's where I think it's easy to fall in that perfection or perfectionist trap. But as long as it works, like it's stable or functional, it caters to the intended audience that you're trying to cater for, and it satisfies the need that they have to some extent. That is enough for you to go ahead and roll it out. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to cover all of the different, you know, corner cases or edge cases or scenarios that might pop up. As long as it satisfies those three things, you should definitely emphasize getting it out to the market as quickly as possible. Now, the reason for that is perfectionism, especially when building new apps, services, features. I would argue it doesn't exist. Some people chase this idea of, oh, I need to have product market fit. I need to have market share. I need this to be the thing that everyone is stuck to like glue. But that's
yeah.
not true. Technology is
Mm,
changing, markets are changing. You'll never get it perfect. But what you want to do is know what base you have to work on or to iterate from. And then from there on, you're no longer focused on development, you're focused on optimizing and improving, which is uh, more fun and can happen a lot faster. So you'll end up slowing yourself down if you wait after you've met those three criteria that I mentioned before.
mhm.
And the most valuable learning that you'll get is once you've gotten it out there, once you've gotten the chance for people to use it and to get data and feedback around it, the value that you will create after that with those inputs is far greater than the value you would have put just working behind the scenes trying to figure it out initially.
Yeah. I when you mentioned, the technology is ever evolving, and so sort of trying to achieve perfectionism in the middle of that sort of an evolving technological storm isn't really ideal. There's also something else that can sometimes halt tech entrepreneurs, and that is the feedback that they receive, and that is very relevant to the topic that our participants will be looking into later today during the workshop. They are discussing about the MVP stage, and with the MVP stage, inadvertently comes in this barrage of, I don't want to call it noise, but there is a lot of feedback that they can often receive. And sometimes it's very difficult to cut through the noise that comes in because, who are you listening to? And I mentioned ever evolving because consumer tastes are also ever evolving in this landscape. So when it comes to picking and choosing the right feedback and ensuring that while you are sort of taking in the consumer feedback, you are also staying true to your vision when it comes to maintaining that sort of a balance. uh, what sort of what would you say are, say, the top three things entrepreneurs need to be looking into when they receive feedback at the MVP stage?
Okay, top three. Number one, I would say is feedback can be and should be both qualitative and quantitative where possible. So you can
Hmm.
take feedback based on observation, based on the way your perceived customers or clients are interacting with your offering. And you can also take feedback directly, qualitatively, in terms of asking questions, and getting candid responses based on that individual or customer's experience. So that's number one, is I would say don't limit yourself to only qualitative or quantitative. Do your best to see if you can capture both. Point number two, relating to your question around how do I maintain my vision while also catering for all of those inputs, all of that feedback. The second point that I would say is it will be dependent upon your sample size. If you are asking 5 people, what is your feedback? Then you may get 5 different answers, and it will be hard for you to devise certain themes or insights if you have 5 unique responses. However, if you have a wider sample size, and it doesn't need to be 50, it can be 10, 15, 20, then it will be easier for you as an entrepreneur to understand, okay, what are the common threads that I'm hearing? What are the common themes that are being dictated to me? Again, qualitatively or quantitatively or both. So the other piece I would say in terms of how do I differentiate what is noise versus what is valuable is if I haven't gotten a concrete insight from something, then I should possibly expand my audience or expand my sample size until I'm able to dissect a specific theme. The third piece that I would say as well is every entrepreneur, in my opinion, should be the right mix of humble and stubborn. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Your vision, the problem that you're trying to solve, or the outcome that you're trying to achieve, that's something that you should be, dreaming about when you sleep. It's something that should be literally circulating in your veins, in your blood at all times. So that level of focus and perseverance is absolutely required. However, that doesn't mean that you are always right. It doesn't mean that it will happen in the way that you thought it was going to happen. And so I think you should focus. My best guidance for that piece is two. Number one, have a lot of opinions, but don't hold on to them tightly. Create hypotheses. So I think if I do this, then this will happen. If I offer this to the customer, then this is how they should respond. But if they don't have a panic attack, right? Like you are on a mission to achieve a certain outcome, to solve a specific problem. Stay on that path, but you know, create your hypotheses and then test those hypotheses in the real world in real time. That's point number one. Point number two is even if your hypothesis fails or if you don't get the response that you're looking for, my best guidance to founders and executives is that should excite you. You're right. I got it wrong. Something is different. I didn't expect this response. For me personally, when I'm running experiments, A/B tests, when I speak to customers and they give me a response that I haven't heard before, I stop everything and I zoom in entirely because I want to know, why didn't I think of this? Why didn't I capture this? What angle are you coming from that I may have missed? Because the more that you do that, then the closer you will get to, or the more often you will be right. And therefore, the closer you will get to that perfection that we talked about previously. Because now you're expanding your horizon for different scenarios, different challenges, or different perspectives, which will only help widen your perspective. So when you're trying to create something, trying to invent something, your mindset should be, I'm not trying to make sure that this thing works in the way that I want it to. It should be, every time it doesn't work, I need to find a new way to make it work. And the more experiences that you have, the more failures that you have actually helps you increase the probability of your success because you're not going to make the same mistake twice.
Right. This was not, I hadn't intended to ask you this question, but you did touch upon the concept of failure. How can entrepreneurs perhaps differentiate between failure and rejection, because sometimes the two are conflated. And
Yes.
I feel like rejection is not necessarily always, and that again goes back to the point you mentioned about not having this idea that everything is going to be in a cookie cutter sort of a format, right? The moment you get rid of the rigidity in your thoughts, then it's easier to deal with stuff like rejection and failure. But when it comes to that fine line between rejection and failure, specifically in this MVP stage, what would your advice be to entrepreneurs to deal with such sentiments?
Oh, okay. Um,
Sorry, I got
Failure
a little
is
deep there.
no, that's okay. I just need to make sure I don't waste too much time. There's a lot of things happening today. Okay. Failure is something that you should be actively seeking as an entrepreneur. For me, from a technical perspective, I want to know what are my upper limits? When does this break? From a go-to-market perspective, from a customer perspective, I want to know what value propositions work or don't work, what channels are more effective or less effective. So every single time I hit a wall, that to me is a failure. And that's what I want to have. I want to know, oh, that's my limit here. Oh, that's my limit there. And it will allow me to um, change course or even pivot my direction if necessary. So failure is inherently good. And the only advice that I would give to my team and to entrepreneurs is you want to fail quickly. You don't want to be stuck in that failed state for an extended period of time. So if that didn't work, drill in more, dig deeper, call your customer, analyze the data, figure out as fast as possible why that didn't work so that you adjust course accordingly. Now,
Okay.
rejection, I think, is a little bit more complicated because as an entrepreneur, as anyone launching a new service or a new offering, it's inevitable. You will be rejected. Not everyone is going to want or even care or even know about what it is that you're trying to bring to them. Now, rejection for me is really important in two ways. Number one, it tells me that the way I'm positioning myself or my offering, my brand, my value proposition should can be improved. So I'm more interested, similar to the reasons why I'm interested why this thing failed. I also am interested in understanding why did you reject this? Because in many cases, it's often in the way that I am framing or positioning the offering that I have, or the feature that I have, or the service that I'm bringing to market. Um, so that's one thing about rejection where you want you want to first of all develop thick skin. Like
Yeah.
every rejection, it hurts, right? Emotionally, you're working on something, this is your baby, you're expecting a specific outcome and you don't get it just because they're like, oh, I'm not interested, oh, I don't care, oh, they didn't click on that, they didn't spend time on it, they didn't convert the order, whatever the case may be. um, you will be rejected. But what you want to have is the right framing, positioning, making sure that you're catering the right offer to the right audiences. And then you want to slowly but gradually improve. You don't want to focus on how many no's, how many rejections did I get. You want the
Yeah.
proportion of how many yeses, how many affirmations to gradually increase. And honestly, in the beginning, it may be one yes for every 9 no's, so a 10%. And then you want to use that to say, okay, well, why did those other 9, more importantly, why did that one person say yes? Let me build on that. Let me emphasize that further. And then
Yeah.
you might get 2 out of 8, and then you might get 3 out of 3 yeses versus 7 nos. So your point is you want to continuously improve the proportion of yeses, and I think that ties to metrics as well. Like
Yes.
there are very basic vanity metrics that you can use that help act as a guide, but similar to
Mhm.
our conversation on failure and rejection,
Yeah.
you don't live and breathe by metrics like click-through rate. Although it's helpful, it's an indicator. It's not the be all and end all of your business or of your offering.
Yeah.
Similarly, personally for me as well, I like to look at, I wake up every morning and I look at what was yesterday's conversion rate, what were yesterday's service levels. Those are helpful metrics for me, but I'm not looking to say, oh, yesterday's conversion was good, I can take it easy today. No, I'm looking for exactly what I talked about before. I'm looking for where things didn't go right so that I can figure out how to improve them further. And that
Okay.
requires you to dive deeper into more detailed metrics, like how much time did it take for the user to execute a specific task? Um, how much time did it take for the user to successfully complete the order? You know, how long did it take for the user to make a specific decision that I wanted them to make, or to interact or engage in a way that I was looking for? So again, you want to start, once you are comfortable with the metrics that match your business model, you then want to get into the behavioral metrics, and you want to start analyzing how are my customers or my clients behaving or interacting with me, and does that match my vision and the experience or the value that I'm trying to create for them.
Great segue, actually, because my next question was actually related to metrics. The ones you mentioned earlier, like conversion rate and all of that, great stuff. I'm just more curious because our viewers today have a very short time span, 45 days to create an app and put it out in the market. So they're sort of, I'm sure they're grappling towards finishing this and getting this done. For them to perhaps streamline their the feedback that they receive and the information that they have, what would you say is a right approach to finding the right metrics for their business ideas? Because I'm sure there are different industries and sectors that they are catering to.
Okay, this is a bit difficult because it varies very much according to business model,
Yeah.
service offering, audience, etc. But I think one piece of guidance I could give in a very short period of time is what, in my experience, what causes customers to stick is, or what influences user behaviors. I think this is and I might go deep onto, psychology for a moment, but I think it's very, very important for us to never let this leave the back of our minds. Humans are emotional beings, and your emotions dictate your behavior and your decisions far more than your rational mind.
I agree.
So this is where the experience or the feeling that you are trying to give to your customer or your user at any stage of the journey, when you're first introducing yourself and building awareness, or after the order has been completed, I would say use or make sure that you are measuring anything related to their behavior and
Mm.
capturing how your offering made them feel. That is, I think, the best or most valuable advice that I could give, because when you are able to give people positive experiences, moments of delight, moments of relief and ease, they will remember you. They are more likely to come back to you, and they are more likely, most importantly, to recommend you to others. And I think
Right.
this is something that sort of can help make sure that you don't end up, I think the best expression was, you don't want to hunt everything that you eat. You want your
Mm.
business, your offering to grow in a way where, you're not hunting, you're farming, right? You create customers that advocate for other customers, that advertise you on your behalf, that talk about you on social media and in other platforms. So all of those beautiful things that help generate or stimulate growth, specifically organic growth, come from the way you make your customer feel.
All right, and my last question to you, and I think again, it's a nice extension of what you were just saying about how you make the customer feel. When you were mentioning in the beginning of the talk that the B2C app was, there was an extension of it that went to the SMEs, and then there was another one that was the web enterprise app. How do you translate that customer ease when you make these different iterations? Because Carrefour recently launched the Carrefour for Business app, for example. When you go from a certain idea and you are aware of the ease it has created for the end user, how do you ensure that a new iteration of it, there's a seamless sort of transition of that ease into a new target market? How do you ensure that?
Uh, I'll keep it very short because I know we're short on time. But I think Number one is it starts with awareness slash education. Do they understand the change that is being made? Did I communicate it or present it clearly? The second piece is interaction. So when I made this change, did it change the engagement pattern, the interaction pattern dramatically or not? And if so, that changes the previous step and the next step, which is finally value creation, measuring how much value I created. And again, that can take different forms. Time, time to service delivery, adding extra value to the same thing that I had previously, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many iterations of that. But education, interaction, and value creation, I think, are the three main bits that I would try to focus on. So when making a change like the enterprise version of our mobile application, did we communicate it to all of our clients in as many channels as we could? Did we tell them what benefits that they will have? And then finally, did we measure how much easier it made it for them to procure our services? And that can be done a number of different ways. Did they order more frequently? Did their value of business in terms of revenues and our engagements with them, did it increase or did it decrease? And did our overall service times again increase or decrease? So that's just a quick example, but the framework for me again is education, interaction, and value creation.
All right. I hope everyone in the audience today has been taking notes, because this, as quick as it was, it was filled with a lot of nuggets of wisdom. Carmen, if we are not too short on time, can we take a couple of questions?
100%. We have eager teams to us. So yeah, maybe we can start with Faisal, that he already raised the hand. So
Hi, I have a yes. Hello, how's everyone? I have a
Hi.
question for Mr. Azadi. So I heard you were saying about when we launch a business, and obviously we have all of this persona about that we need to be market fit, we need to have this ready, we need to have these type of customers. But actually, with Carrefour, can I just ask a question? As in, when Carrefour first launched in Dubai, which we know is a very saturated market, did they ever come to a point where actually in the first couple of months or the first year, they weren't getting the traction or the business or the amount of customers they were actually projected to have in the first year? But did Carrefour ever have a point where actually it's not working? Do we pivot? Do we do something different? Or do we still go with our plan? Eventually, those customers will be coming along at some point.
Absolutely, yes. And in fact, I would say that we still go through those cycles. Just instead of when we first launched a new service, now it's when we are adding, new service variations or item variations. Every time we're doing something new, the growth curve actually typically looks pretty flat initially and then, starts to spike up. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is assuming, of course, you're educating and bringing awareness, as best you can. I think for us in our line of business, I am changing the behavior of customers that weren't already using my service. So you were typically used to, going to service appointments for your vehicles or going to specific stations or depots to serve your vehicles. And in my case, I'm shifting that around. So that sometimes that takes time to stick. And that's okay. That's where you want to, once you've validated, is this working? Are they using it? Did they like it? Then you kind of just need to persevere. And, in some cases, maybe sort of continue reminding and continue incentivizing them to improve their frequency. But there's another piece here. So apart from trying to change their behaviors, I think, there's, of course, the entire customer lifecycle ebbs and flows, right? You're acquiring customers, then you're converting them typically, and then you're focusing on trying to, improve the value exchange to retain them and make them more valuable customers over time, improving the customer lifetime value. And I think the nature of those games is very, very different. So my piece here is it's important for you to understand what you want to optimize first. Is it do I need to streamline acquisition better, or am I having a conversion related issue, or are customers just dropping off like flies? And then focus your efforts, your very limited time and resources on just trying to solve one of those problems initially and then worrying about the other ones sequentially. So typically, if you're a brand new entrepreneur, and your go-to-market channels might be loosely defined, or you're not really quite sure what works, most of the time you want to focus a lot on acquisition. What works in my acquisition? What helps me activate new customers? And then once you've built a bit of confidence on that, then you can worry more about sort of conversion and the stickiness or frequency of engagement with you. So overall, I would validate, yes, it's not linear growth.
Okay.
It typically flat in the beginning and moves up. And again, you can focus based on what we talked about before in terms of analysis, feedback, etc. Like, is this something I need to streamline on the acquisition side, on the order placement / conversion side, or am I losing customers as fast or faster than I'm obtaining them? And I think asking those high level questions will help you focus your efforts accordingly.
Okay, so you shouldn't really focus on those in the first early stages, like in the first 1 or 2 months or 6 months. You should only start seeing that pattern 6 months to a year onwards, right? Because in the first year, typically all businesses, or is it in the first 2 years or 3 years? Typically, businesses shouldn't really be making too much money anyway. Your business should be at a negative before it starts developing the customers and then going into positive. Is that correct?
It depends on your strategy. Some people
Depends on
burn a lot in the beginning and extract, reap the rewards much later. And that's okay. Some people, take a slower but surer growth path where they, reduce their cost base in the beginning in terms of whatever it may be, marketing, incentives, et cetera, so that they have a more sustainable, albeit slightly slower growth curve. And both of those models work. It just depends
Okay.
on the sort of the nature of your business. But to expect something to blow up or go viral overnight is a very common problem that I see entrepreneurs make.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it also relates to what we talked about before in terms of failure and rejection.
Yeah.
In the early days, focus on what's working and double down on what's working.
Okay. And what worked? Last question. What worked for Carrefour? Because obviously with you guys, your costs are like the vans. So how many vans did
Yes.
you initially start off with? Was it 1? Was it 2?
10. Yes.
Okay. So you injected a lot. So Carrefour actually injected a lot more money, knowing that it can actually work. It can't work.
Only after we knew that it worked functionally.
How?
Who would benefit? Well, we invested in the prototype initially.
Okay.
Okay. Then we built an app, which also was functionally sound. Okay.
Okay.
And then we started testing who would want to order this service and seeing, what type of service levels or operating model would best serve us. So
And when you
that's what I
did,
meant by
okay. And when you did the testing, was that beta testing?
yes.
Okay, because that's what we're kind of
Yes.
looking at the moment before we do a full launch. And do you advise doing beta testing for all the participants before we do a full launch?
In general, I would say testing. Why do we test? I test when I have a low confidence level against what I'm trying to release, okay, or what I'm trying to give. So for me, testing is selfish. Testing is I need to be more confident. I want to be more confident that this is going to be well received in the market. So I know it works. I have an idea of who it's going to help. And I understand at least costs and like P&L wise what the implications of this are. But how is it going to land? That's what I test for. Because it gives me kind of a softer landing or an opportunity to still iterate in case any of my hypotheses were not correct, right? So in general, yeah, I would say I'm a strong advocate for testing and experimentation, but not for its own sake, not to capture data. No. I'm testing because I want to be confident that this will work. I don't want to stay in test mode forever. And I also don't want to jump the gun and throw something and turn on the marketing dollars when I'm not really sure if I got it right in terms of the value proposition and how users will consume it and how frequently and so on and so forth. So until I have a good picture of how this is going to land, that's when I test. But once I have, who's my target audience, how are they going to use it, and did I achieve the benefit that I was intending to achieve, which is again the first 3 questions that we covered in the first question. In the first discussion topic. then I don't need to test anymore. Now I need to optimize.
Okay,
Thank
no, that's
you.
fine. Thank you so much for all of that information.
Faisal should have been in my seat today, actually. Jeff
Oh,
has
question
been waiting very
25.
patiently.
I'm so sorry, guys.
It's all right. That's all right.
Sorry.
Thank you, Faisal. Jeff has been waiting patiently. Let's give it to him.
Okay, thank you so much for this session. It's really insightful. So I'll try to keep this brief. So one of the first things I did before this session, I took out time to study Carrefour, the entire website, the core things and what it's all about. And I realized something. Yes, it's a certain target audience, but with diverse needs. And I would really love if the response you give to this is a real life scenario, because that's how I picture it's easy for me to interpret if it's a real life scenario. So let's say you have a Carrefour customer at your first launch. I can get gas from anywhere from my car, but I'm very sensitive to who I take my car to repair. Some people don't care. They're like, okay, I can take my car anywhere to repair, but I'm very sensitive to where I take my car to wash. So how were you able to work around convincing multiple customers with diverse needs to use one platform? So yeah,
Very good.
you're able to get them, yeah, you get gas, but you stop using this and start using.
Yes.
Were you like, okay, ours is better or is cheaper, or we also serve this? So how were you able to work around it to make them forsake all other options which they've been using for years to stick to a real life? Really helpful.
Okay, I'll try to give you a real life example, but to be honest with you, all of my services have different value propositions. Even though the commonality is I bring the service to you, the reality is I appeal to different audiences for different pain points based on the nature of the service. So I'll go with our core service, which is fuel. All right. My value proposition for fuel is not cheaper. Okay. It's faster. Right. And it's definitely not a degradation of quality. So it's the same quality, faster, but not cheaper. So we tested different value propositions for this. And the positioning of our offering was also, I needed to bring awareness that the quality is the same. We're bringing the service station to you. I'm bringing the petrol station to you. Okay. And then similarly, I also needed to test or to validate the fact that I am saving you time. So I was bringing education around the fact that nobody actually thinks about how much time you waste on a weekly basis in a petrol station. So this is where I needed to change the paradigm. And it was largely with how we positioned ourselves. So it's like, I bring the service station to you, keep doing the things that you would otherwise be doing and leave your fueling need to us. And there were years and years of iteration on this positioning, on this messaging, and a lot of experimentation around should we incentivize, should we not incentivize? But so that leads me to the second point. You mentioned we have a very, very diverse audience with very, very diverse needs. And I think a big mistake that Kafu made in the beginning, which we have now learned from many years later, I don't need to cater to all of my audiences. And I shouldn't. It's very expensive and very time consuming. What we've instead been doing recently is I'm only catering to the ones that stop going to the petrol station. What are the profiles? What are the segments that I have a large degree of stickiness where they see the value proposition, they jump on board right away, and they stop going to the petrol station. And I have data to back this up as well. I know which vehicles, which locations in the UAE have a higher probability of not going to the petrol station after they've tried our service. Now I focus wholly on those vehicle segments, those communities, and those user segments, and I only want to add value to them. Anyone else is great. It helps me as a business, but as long as I am maximizing the value I'm giving to my target segments, I'm a very happy man.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to stop here. I'm sure everyone here would have loved to listen to Adam for another hour. I personally would have loved for this to carry on for another hour or two. But if Carmen, if we are okay, I think we'll have to end this conversation here. Adam, thank you very much. You've been an incredible guest. The answers were amazing. I'm sure the audience today has taken home a lot of important nuggets of wisdom. So thank you very much for your time. And if all is okay, Carmen, I'll hand over the mic to you.
Alia, you cannot summarize better. Thank you very much, Alia, for joining us and ask so interesting questions to Adam. And Adam, I was really see myself in your data because I don't remember when it was last time that I went to the petrol station. So really, it was a pleasure having you here. It was super interesting, insightful, and I love the tips and all the knowledge that you share with us today. So
Thank you. And thank you everyone for the time. Thank you for the brilliant questions. And honestly, I wish you all the best of luck and success. I hope you all not only are successful in your endeavor, but most importantly, that you enjoy the ride, that the learning, the growth, all of it is a fantastic experience that is not easy to find in life. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you for your time. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Adam. Thanks a lot. So yeah, I think that as I said, we were very lucky, and I'm not wrong that we were very lucky to have both of them today. But now is the moment to start our session for today. So just to show where we are, it's workshop 3, as I said, focus on testing, feedback, and refining your MVP for a success launch is the topic that today Kushan and Banu will go through that. Just a reminder, next week is week 4. We will not have a workshop, so it's the time for you to really deep dive and work. And please don't forget to book your mentoring sessions, get your one-to-one, all the technical questions that might arise. Please don't hesitate for a second to fill the form if they are urgent, because the team will be able to answer super fast and not book your session, because that is the beauty, that they are completely custom made for you and to support you and help you fix the challenge that you face. So take advantage of that. So this week is week 3. We will not have check-in call because here in the UAE is Eid holidays, so we will not have the check-in call. But I will see you in the following week, that is week 4. So week 4, we don't have workshop, but we will have a check-in to catch up and see how the thing's going, if there is any questions. So I will see you that Friday. So next workshop, it will be workshop 4. That will be on week 5, 16th of June. That's as a recap. All of you must have your calendar invite book on your agenda, but as a reminder. So now I will leave the floor to Banu, that he will go ahead, and that's it. Wish you all the best for today. Thank you, Banu. That is part of our team.
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. So I think we can go ahead and get started. So before we get started with the session, guys, just want to remind you guys on the housekeeping rules here. So please keep your mic on, the mic on mute, right? So it'll be easier, and you can raise your hand if you want to participate in the discussion. You can use the chat to engage with everyone. If you have any questions, you can use the chat to communicate with us while the session is going on. And in order to engage with us, it's better if you can have your camera turned on as well. So hope you guys can adhere to these rules. So moving on to the next slide. Right, so the agenda for today, now we already completed the founder spotlight. Now we are going to go into the introduction and the testing overview. We are going to be exploring on the no-code testing options. The testing tools overview will be covered, as well as the Firebase Crashlytics. And then we are also going to be covering the feedback and the issue analysis. And then finally, the key takeaways and the wrap-up will be the final thing that we have on our agenda for today. Right. So before we get into the workshop, before we get started on the workshop, right, we have this icebreaker. So we want to keep you guys engaged. So I would really appreciate if you guys can go to menti.com menti.com, and or you can just go ahead and scan this QR code that you see on screen right now, and then enter the code 41557988. If you directly scan the code, I think you will be directed to that page without you having to enter, right? So if you come over here, you will see, imagine that you're the tester, right? You're going to be the tester. Look at the app on the screen and pin any bugs or any bad design elements that you see, right? So you got 1 minute. So I'll give you guys a little bit of time to just open up menti.com, enter in the code, and then, or you can go ahead and scan the QR code, and then you can go ahead and spot the fails, spot the issues in this. All right, I can see that some participants are already interacting with it, so that's really good. I encourage everyone else also to take part in this bug hunt as a part of this icebreaker session before we get started on the workshop. I think 1 minute's up. Shall we go ahead and see what everyone thinks? All right, so moving on to the screen with the embed. Okay, so already a couple of people have highlighted different issues in this screen. As you guys can see, some parts of, let's say, the elements that we have, the item title doesn't match the picture that is given, and in some elements it's like cluttered. So if I have the description of this in the following slide, we can move on to the next slide. So these are some of the common signs of bad UI UX design, right? So the overcrowded layout, it's a bit hard to navigate. It's overwhelming to the user. So when you're coming up with your design, just ensure that the UI that you have come up with is not overcrowded at all. And then the wrong or non-functional buttons, right? If the clear function or the purpose of that button is not defined, then that can also be bad UI UX design principle that you have used. And then inconsistent design elements, breaking the visual harmony, staying on track with what you have planned to do. So always keep checking that as well as the poor visual hierarchy, right? Important actions not standing out, that is also another problem that might arise. Then the poor navigation bar, which could lead to user confusion. So have an eye out on that as well. And the lack of feedback or error handling. So ensure that you have the correct user actions or to avoid unnecessary errors. Always listen to the user's feedback and improve on your UI, right? It's very important that we build the best version of this app that we can build so that it gets to the store right on time as a part of this accelerator. And hopefully all of you can get your app onto the store. So now we'll move on to the workshop for today. So moving on to the next slide. So we have introduction to testing, and that is going to be conducted by Kushan. So I would like to hand over the session to Kushan to go ahead and take you guys through this wonderful workshop that he has planned on the testing. So thanks a lot to everyone for participating in the icebreaker. So let's go ahead and get started with the workshop. All the best to all of you.
Thanks, Bart. So my name is Kushan, and my main areas would be testing and UI UX, right? So I'm going to take you through different areas that need to be considered when it comes to testing and what you need to do to make sure your application is stable when it gets to the stores. Right, so I'm going to start off with a quote. The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of meeting the schedule is forgotten. So this basically talks about how getting an app done fast is not the best approach if the quality is not maintained. So while working at a very fast pace, it's important to make sure that the quality is good and it's well tested and without any crashes when it gets to the store. So that's where testing comes in. So testing your MVPs is going to be extremely important before releasing it to the public. So by doing testing, you can validate your app's core ideas early on so that you can avoid a waste of effort. So this way, you don't work on unnecessary features. You don't work on, you don't need to rework on bugs, and you will have a stable UI as soon as possible. And of course, by identifying bugs early, you will reduce the risk of having a higher cost, because once you reach your user base, having bugs is going to be a big problem because the cost is going to be higher, and releasing updates into production will have a higher cost. And of course, by gaining real user insights, you can make decisions. Does something work? What doesn't work? So like this, you can make decisions and make sure you're giving your customers the best application that will be useful. And of course, by doing testing early on, you can accelerate time to market and iterate your build to match what is required by the market in a very fast speed. So without further ado, we'll move on to the types of testing. So the very first thing when it comes to testing is going to be functional testing. So we have functional testing and non-functional testing. And functional testing basically refers to all the features that you're going to be working on. So for conducting this, there are multiple ways available. And unit testing is one of the very basic methods which helps the developers make sure that there are no bugs. So unit testing is conducted by developers, and each individual component gets tested during this time. So most of these tests are written as code. So I'll be showing a small example of how it can be done. And using the code, it validates whether your code is working properly. So this is mainly something that's going to be used when it comes to backend development, and it can be used in front-end development as well, but like mainly for backend development to make sure the business logic of your application works properly. And once the unit testing, which is the component-wise testing, is done, you start testing the components together, right? So there can be multiple components in an application, and at the end of the day, it's going to be working together to give the proper outputs. So integration testing is done to make sure that all the components work together properly and don't have any collapses. So this can either be done using code similar to unit testing, or there are multiple tools where you can test. So this can be done in terms of just the backend testing, and of course, sometimes related to the front end as well. Especially related to the front end, because once the front end and back end are usually developed, what's done is integration. You have the APIs coming from the back end, you have the UIs coming from the front end, and you need to connect these two together. And that's the point where the APIs get tested to make sure everything works fine. And once the backend and front end are connected, you can identify whether the components work together properly. And of course, in the backend as well, there might be components that are interacting with each other. So these can all be validated when the integration testing is done, because you will be testing the application in the same way that the user will be seeing, but it won't be a complete application that will be there. So that's when system testing comes. It's quite similar to integration testing, but system testing is the completed application. So when you're talking about the MVP in the scenario here, the completed MVP is going to be where you will be conducting the system test. So you will be doing a proper end-to-end testing here to ensure that the whole app functions correctly. So for this also, there's different methods that you can use, which we will be discussing going forward. Right. So right here, I have an example for a unit test that has been written. So I have written a very simple API over here, which returns the names of cats. So we have Tom, Jerry is a mouse, but yeah. Garfield, another cat. So the purpose of this API that's been written over here is to return the list of cats. So that's on the left side, and on the right side we have the code that has been written for testing. So before each test is conducted, there are certain configurations that need to be done, and during the execution there are some certain things that will be executed. And right at the end on line 21 you can see expect. Once the final function is called on the left, from the function in the left side, it says to equal result. So with unit testing, you essentially say that when this input is given, this is going to be the exact output that's going to come out. So that way you can check whether the code is actually returning the correct values. Right? So finally, the most important thing is once you run through the, once you have written all the unit tests, you need to make sure it works fine. And by running a simple command, you can test it. So on the left side again, you can see there are 2 test cases that have passed, 3 have passed, and 0 have failed. So like this, once the unit test is completed, you will get a report of what worked and what didn't. So when it comes to integration testing, like I said, there's multiple tools that you can use. You can either write it using code like what I showed earlier for the unit test, or you can use tools like Postman. So Postman is a very popular tool for testing APIs, and there's another one called Swagger. So with these tools, what you essentially do is you hand over your APIs to the tool. So you can see there's a GET request that has been put over here. And at the bottom, you can see the body of the request has been entered over here. So this way, you're telling exactly what data is going to go into the backend, and you will get a certain output. And with that output, you can validate whether your backend is working. So once that's validated properly, once it's validated that the backend is working as expected, you can integrate it with your front end and display the data as expected in your mobile application. So this is the process of backend testing and doing the integration once the integration tests have got completed. So Postman is a very useful tool to use if you're working with custom backends and APIs and REST APIs. Definitely, Postman is definitely a tool that you can use to work on the testing. And of course, there's another one called Swagger. So with Swagger, it's more of a documentation that you write. And through the Swagger documentation also, you can test your APIs. So once the functional testing is done, you get the, so usability testing falls somewhere in between functional testing and non-functional testing, because this is a test that you conduct by observing real users. You give your application to, so it might not be the completed application, but you will be giving the application to real users to check whether it's performing as expected. So through this, you can identify confusing UIs, unclear navigation, and user pain points that are there. So there are different ways to gather the data that's that comes out of these tests. So the participants will be performing a set of tasks that are given by the developers to give an idea of what the task is. So with those tasks, the participants will be given giving the feedback, and there might be interviews or different observations or forms that can be used for getting this feedback. So let me ask you a question. How many of you all have given your application out to potential users and got some feedback? And of course, if you got any interesting feedback through that kind of test, let's have a round of messages on the chat. And if you have given the application out for users to test, please raise your hand through Zoom. So I don't see any hands up. That would probably mean that no one has. Okay, there are some feedback. Okay, we put it on test flight. That's good. Got valuable feedback on problems the users were facing. Okay, another one has been already tested in the field. That's good. Checking and doing the alpha testing. So excellent. So usability testing is underway by most teams. That's an excellent stage to be at during this week. Right. So let's continue with the presentation here. So now, when you conduct these tests, some of the questions that you can ask would be, what are you trying to do on this screen? So you're not specific. So you're asking this from the user to get an idea whether they understand the purpose of the layout. So remember, a characteristic of good UX is to make sure that what's there on the UI is understandable without having to explain everything. So by asking a question like this, you can understand whether your users understand what needs to be done without being given instructions. So that should be the ultimate goal when it comes to releasing an application as well. So another important question is, was anything unclear or frustrating? So with this, you can identify whether there are any areas in the user experience that need to be improved and any pain points that would chase away your customers. So if any frustrating points are identified, you need to make sure you work on those things and iterate to make sure whatever problems that are there are solved. That way the user experience can be improved. So another question. So if you're giving your tests according to different sections or pages, you can ask questions like, what did you expect would happen when you click that? So this is essentially to get an understanding of whether the users have an idea of what kind of feedback is going to happen, or like what kind of result is expected when they do some kind of interaction. So with this, again, you can identify whether the app behaves according to the user's expectations and make sure the application is on board to make sure it gives the user the best user experience with an easy understanding. Okay, so how easy or difficult was it to complete a task? So this is a question you can give on a scale of 1 to 5. So that way you can identify whether the user experience was good or whether it needs to be improved. Because at the end of the day, using an application needs to be easy, right? And you can get suggestions on what would you change or improve. So leaving the users open for feedback would give you an input on what are the users expecting. Because as a developer, as developers, you will be on a certain mindset. And when you're used to those UIs, you're not going to be able to see some of the problems that are there. So getting a fresh perspective from users during a test like this would give you a better understanding of what needs to be improved. Right. So another test needs to be conducted is performance testing and stability testing. Right. So for performance and stability, there are certain tests that can be conducted, and load test and stress tests are two testing methods that are there. So load testing essentially means how much of a load can an app simultaneously handle. Right. So I'll give an example. So a while back, around 10 years ago, I ran this application when I was very early into development, and we got around 8,000 live users. So at that point, the application had become very slow because the server was not able to handle that. So that was a lesson that was learned, and that's why doing the load test to make sure your expected user count is met is important. And of course, the stress test, it pushes the application to its limit. You will be simulating thousands or maybe millions of users according to what kind of response you will be expecting from the application. And with this, you can do the test to make sure what's the limit. By conducting the stress test, you can identify at what point is it going to fail? So another example I can take is WhatsApp had this thing where if you make your message too long, it used to crash. So this is again from around 10 years ago. And that used to be a thing that was exploited quite often to make sure to get groups to crash. So what WhatsApp did was they have increased the word count, and nowadays it's almost impossible to simulate that kind of crash. So by doing stress testing, you can identify the limits and make sure your application can handle a lot of users. So now again, another question going out to you all. Around how many users will you be expecting your application to be used by, specifically in the first 30 days? So shall we have a round of messages on the chat again? How many users are you expecting during the first 30 days once you go into production? Roughly around 100, around 200. 100 to 150. The answers should be coming in faster. We've got around 20 groups here. Right, 150 to 200. So roughly around that area in the first 30 days. So those are good targets to keep. And by doing the load testing and the stress testing, of course, stress testing, I don't think it will crash at the 200 point, but definitely by doing the load testing, you can identify how well your application will perform with that number of users. All right, so moving on. The next most important thing, and this is the most important type of test that you're going to be conducting, is beta testing. And this is the user acceptance test and the final thing that's going to be that you're going to be working. So beta tests generally go towards a larger extent of users and testing in real environments. So it's almost like an actual release where you will be reaching out to actual customers and actual users. So this can be done as either as a private beta or public beta. So what's private beta and what's public beta? So for private beta, you're going to be inviting your testers. So this would probably be at the earliest stage of public testing. So you can do this in multiple ways. So invite only. It's going to be a very controlled environment. You will probably be saying what kind of things that need to be tested. And ideally, it's for gathering focus feedback early on. So the earlier user testing that I mentioned would also qualify for a private beta. And of course, when it comes to a public beta, you're going to be reaching out to a wider audience. And this would probably give a public link. Or if you want, if you're not taking the approach of going through a store, you can, on Android, of course, you can pass around a APK file. And with that, you can do the test. Or of course, the Google Play Store also has its ways of allowing you to conduct tests through the store itself, where you can get a public link. So it's useful for large scale testing before launch. So based on what kind of based on the count of users that you're expecting, you can open it up to a certain number of people. So for example, let's say you're opening up for 200 users. So your beta testing can be conducted by around 20 users, around 10%. So with that, you can get a better idea of how it's going to be interacting when it comes to an actual testing environment. Because what's tested in the development environment is not going to be what's going to be happening in the live environment. It's always important to see what happens. Users may not interact with the application as you expect. So with the tests properly conducted, you can actually get an idea of how most of these things work properly. Right. So next up, what we have is the Google Play console for testing. Right. So the Google Play Console offers 3 types of testing, which are internal testing, closed testing, and open testing. So internal testing is essentially the private beta where you do quick deployments, limited testers, immediate feedback. So probably for the initial user tests, you can use internal testing. Closed testing, again, it's for slightly wide audience. It's for a slightly wide audience, but again, it's going to be through a control group. So you can essentially list the users. You can create a group with all the users who are going to be testing. And with that, you can get the feedback as required. Okay, so internal testing and closed testing more towards private beta, and open testing, you will be giving it to a wider audience, and you will be able to get feedback from a proper user's perspective, right? So an example for this is, a while back, I remember Instagram, WhatsApp, and like most of these applications on the Google Play Store opened up beta testing. So the users were actually able to get a early preview of some of the features that were coming out, and were able to give feedback. So I remember a feature like that for stories. There were two lines of stories that came up in the beta test, but it never showed up in the actual application because the user feedback didn't work out. So that's where testing is important. If it doesn't work, you need to pivot. And with tests, you can get all the results that are required for doing that properly. So Google Play Store requires certain permissions when it comes to working with these testers. So the main thing is going to be your testers need to have a Google account, especially when it comes to the Google testing, right? So you need to add them via email for that particular track, and you can send the invitation. And generally, these users need to accept the invitation, especially for closed testing. The users need to opt into the testing program, and they can work. They can look into the tests and see what works and what doesn't. And of course, for the open track, you can share a public link, which gets enabled when it's added to the testing track. So an important thing to note in this is, for internal testing and closed testing, you will need to have the listings. So sorry, internal testing, you won't need the listing, but for the closed track and the open track, you will need a listing. So you will need the account, and you will have to fill in certain details to be able to go into testing. There's a small approval process for, especially for open testing, but of course, internal testing and closed testing, you can get into testing almost immediately. The internal testing, as I remember, it takes around 15 minutes for the application to get provisioned, and you can start testing from that point onwards. So as you can see from the screenshot below, there's a UI for adding users. So by clicking the invite new users option, you can add the users and create these testing groups. And with the group, you can start running your tests. So the setup required for running the closed testing and the open testing, you need to provide a valid application name, because there's going to be a listing. A proper icon needs to be there, and there's certain metadata that you need to fill in. So filling in the app content and getting the rating for the application done. So like, there's a lot of steps that are there in the Google Play Store before going into an actual release. So during this testing tracks as well, you need to look into those. And of course, you need a privacy policy posted on a separate website that you will use. And once all of this is done, you can upload the signed APK file or the AAB file, which is the bundle file, and move on to your release. So generally, the bundle file is what's recommended, and not the APK. But of course, like, if you're sharing it through other means and not through the Google Play Store, you can share APK file and get your testers to try it out as well. So like I said, internal testers don't really need a store listing, but for closed testing and open testing, you will see the listing, and you will have to make sure the details are accurate, especially when it comes to open testing, because Google will not allow it to go into testing. So sometimes you might be required to upload a video as well. So that's essentially how you can get testing done with the Google Play Store. So can I have a raise of hands if anyone has put your applications into any of these testing tracks on the Google Play Store? Okay, we have one. Any others who have put it up for any of the testing tracks? So which testing track are you testing on at the moment? If you can just drop a message on the chat. Okay, there's internal testing, APK testing in Google, and okay, the Apple App Store as well, which brings me to the next point, which is, okay, so one more point on Google. Testers should be informed about the testing process, and like especially when it comes to internal testing and close testing, if there are any known issues, you need to inform your testers that this part is broken. Don't worry if it breaks. You can include a feedback channel that prompts the users to give feedback if something goes wrong. So you can use Google Groups or WhatsApp groups or any form of communication to manage your testing in the closed tracks to make sure that all the details are tracked properly. Right? Which brings us to the next step, which is Apple Test Flight. So just like the testing tracks on Google, iOS also has a testing beta testing track option called Apple Test Flight. So again, through this also, the users need to opt in. An email will be sent to the users who are added as testers, and the application, it will be shared through a link. And you need this iOS application called Test Flight to be installed on your iOS devices for the testing to be conducted. So this allows roughly around 10,000 external users. So if you're expecting millions of users to be using your app, you can have around 10,000 external users testing during Test Flight. So some of the major differences when it comes to the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, the review requirements may be different. Test onboarding is somewhat similar, but it can be a little bit more complicated. And of course, pushing to the store is a completely different process. So on the Google Play Store, you just need to drag and drop the file and upload it for it to be approved. As for Apple, you need this application called the transport application. Once everything is completed, you push it to the store through the transport application, and it becomes available for listing and for testing. And once it appears under Test Flight, the users can get into the beta tests. So both of these tracks are very useful for making sure the testing is done on each platform. And you can get the testing done before going into the actual public release. So has anyone tested on Test Flight? Earlier, I think we had a response for Test Flight. Anyone else who has worked with Test Flight? Okay, guess not. So let's move on. So if you're working on publishing to Apple as well, using Apple Test Flight is also an option that you can consider to make sure your application smoothly on iOS. Both platforms. Right. So the next type of testing that is there is black box testing. So this is not really at the level of beta testing. It's at an initial level, but for instances where you're not going to be testing using code, or it might be a full system test, you can use black box testing. So for this, you don't really need internal knowledge of the application's code. The testers are given the exact inputs that they need to put and the expected outputs that are there. So using even a simple Google sheet, you can conduct a black box test. So the outcomes are solely based provided and the expected results are given. So the users know the testers rather know exactly what needs to be the result. And this is very useful for checking for user-facing functionalities and UIs. So unit test was conducted for the backend tests and the APIs. The black box testing is mostly for the front-end tests and the UIs to make sure all the UIs are functioning as expected. So for demonstrating black box testing, I have prepared a small demo, and this is going to be, I have built a small app using Adelo, and I have a set of test cases that I have written. And with that, I will demonstrate how you can conduct this test. So let me switch on to that screen. Right, so this is the application I have built using Adelo. And once the application is built, you have this option called View App. So when you click on that, it will prompt you a QR code similar to this. So with that, you can move on to your tests. So just give me 1 second to find that screen. Looks like I have the wrong device there. So let me move this over here. Right. Okay, so the application that I have made using Adelo is here, and I have a bunch of test cases over here. So I have the user registration process, which we don't really need to fill because it's inside. And for the home page, I have come up with a set of test cases. So what we see in this screen is a simple form that's allowing us to add a to-do. So what I'm going to be doing over here is testing all these scenarios that are there. So this is a template that can be used for doing this black box testing. So the test cases that are going to be covered, how many tests have passed, how many tests have failed, whether there are any blockers. A blocker is essentially an area where you can't go beyond that test because something has not been set up properly. And I use this term called UI blockers in instances where you can't test the certain particular scenario because the UI is breaking or it's not completed. Right. So in our to-do list application, I have come up with a bunch of test cases like this. So add a to-do. So it tells should get added to the to-do list. So let me add a to-do over here. Okay, so I'll say test the app, and I'll put the date as tomorrow, and I'm going to add it over here. Okay, it says action cannot be completed. But let me reload this. So it's just a matter of scanning the QR code like that. And And on iPhones, you get this download button that you can use. And that there's an option to add to the home screen. So like that, you can add the application. And let me open this and let's see whether the application works this time. Okay, so it shows the sign up and everything. So I already created an account, so I will log into that. Okay, so let me try again. So I'll say test app and give the date. Try to edit. Looks like we have a few technical difficulties with the application. Okay, there we go. So the test case has appeared. So it appears in the to-do list. So we can mark this test case as passed. So after it's added, the form should get cleared. The test case has been given as the form should be cleared. So you can see the date is still here. So that means the form didn't get cleared as expected. So we can mark this as a fail. And click on the checkbox to mark that as completed. So you can see it got added as completed. So that means we can put this as a pass. So uncheck the checkbox to return it back to the to-do list. That also works fine. So that also we can mark as pass. And click on the to-do. So that shows a detailed page. So we can see the detailed page over here. And over here we have option to add a subtask. So I'll add subtask 1. And that got added. So again, we can mark this also as a pass. And the final test case is to delete the to-do that's there. So I'm going to click on delete task. And it went to the home screen as expected. It says goes back to the home screen and the item is removed. But you can see the item has not got removed. So that means again, the test case has failed. So you can mark it like that. And that's the easiest way to run a test case with no-code platforms. If you're working on no-code platforms, this is a very easy way to conduct your tests. So it's not limited to no-code platforms. On full code platforms, on hybrid platforms, and any method that you do testing on, any method that you're doing your development on, you can run a full black box test and do this. So like this is not going to be going into the outside users, but it will be somewhat of an internal testing format that you will be using for making sure that all the components in the UIs work as expected. Right, so let me get back to my slide deck. Right, so here's a small cheat sheet for how you can conduct your black box testing. So the areas that need to be tested, very specially when it comes to testing, is not the positive test cases. So a positive test case is the path that you're going to be expecting the users to be taking, right? So that's going to be working anyways. As developers, you will be testing that part, and you're going to be missing certain items, right? So when it comes to writing the test cases, so this is more of a QA role. When you're writing the test cases, you need to test the negative test cases more than the positive test cases. So it can be, for example, invalid inputs, right? So there can be instances where you're expected to write only numbers, but if you add some kind of text, it will give an error, right? So areas like this, you need to specifically check to make sure that inputs are going in properly. There can be instances where even if a field is empty, it will go on to the next screen, right? So you have to make sure that that kind of scenario doesn't happen. So in the Adobe application, I forgot to show that, but in that, even if the field is left empty, it does get added, in which case a test case for the empty field will be filled, right? Another thing is the boundary or limit test, right? To make sure, like for example, in the database, there might be a limit of 250 characters, right? But in your application, you're allowing 500 characters. So if you enter 500 there and send the request, it will probably crash or some kind of unexpected behavior will happen. So I remember once in an application, I put a password, right? It allowed me to type multiple characters, or I assumed that I was allowed to type multiple characters. I tried to log in later. It's not accepting my password. So what has happened is the password length had got capped in the middle, and I had no idea that it was capped. So I think I came up with a password of like 20 characters or something like that, but it had got capped at 15. So I had no idea where it had got capped. It took forever to figure it out. And that hindered the user experience that I had with that application, right? So testing these boundaries is important that way. And of course, one of the most important thing is making sure that unauthorized access is not there, especially if you have multiple roles in your application, especially in your admin dashboards. Based on the type of user, the access needs to be given properly, and you need to conduct thorough tests to make sure that the application won't allow users without the relevant access to access material that is supposed to be not shared, right? So these are certain things that you can test. So when you come up with the test cases for your application, this is something that you can do, right? So now we are going to be moving on to a small activity. So there's a black box test that we are going to be conducting. So a link will be put on the chat, and you can download the test cases. And with that, you have 5 minutes for the exact test case for the exact application that you're building. You're going to be writing test cases, right? And after that, you can submit that. So you have 5 minutes for that. And what you want to do is write 6 test cases. So you don't need to stop yourself at 6. If you can, go for even more. But remember the points that I mentioned earlier in the cheat sheet, and you can write the test cases with that. So let's see. So if you can't write your test cases on the Excel sheet itself, you can write it somewhere else also and keep. That's completely fine. So 1 minute remaining. Right. So that marks the end of the time we have for writing the test cases. So do we have any volunteers who would like to read out the test cases that we have that they have written? So you can unmute yourself and read out the test cases that you have written. Excellent. We have a volunteer. You can unmute yourself, turn on the camera, and
Okay.
read out the test cases.
Hi everyone, my name is Veronica and we are building mobile woman well-being app, Balance Size. Now we are on the alpha testing, ready to go to the beta testing. The the cases what I wrote, it's actually, I don't know if it comes to the negative or positive things, but for us on the sign in, we use the sign in with the different part, with the Apple email, Facebook or the Google account. So basically there is no username and password creation there. There's just giving you verification code. So now once I read this form, I was thinking, do really need this to have? So this is a question also for you. Do it's really recommended to have this click forgot password or the really password to do? And the other negative things that I would put on the app, we have still, because we're using the APIs of the ChatGPT on the certain area, so it's taking the time to download the results, I would say, or the recommendation that we were using. So this is all what is the negative. For the positive, I would say it's like very easy interface. You can see it's the section is done. This also receiving already by user feedback. So it's the clean interface, good design, easy to navigate. And all icons, it's kind of indicate what it states for. There's some small icons which you don't see. So that's all.
Right. Thank you very much, Veronica.
Thanks.
Those are actually excellent test cases. So like when it comes to using other platforms to have a user sign in, depending on the platform, you will have to write the test cases. So like most of the time, if it's like a Google sign in or like a Facebook sign in, you won't need the forget password because those particular platforms will be handling that. But in those instances, what you will need to test is whether you can log into those. But if you do have the username and password login also as an option, then for that particular scenario, you'd want to have the test case, making sure that the password changes. And of course, the timing test case that you mentioned also is a very good test case. So when it comes to the APIs, you'd want to have the APIs being delivered in a timely manner. So that's also a very good test case that you can test. So like you can go further in that and like set a time for what's expected for loading. So if there's any test cases like that, you can go with something like that. So excellent work, excellent test cases that you came up with over there. Right. So I hope everyone participated in that activity and came up with interesting test cases. So with the time that we have, I'll have to move on to the next parts of the workshop. But definitely use black box testing for testing your progress. Right. So let's continue with our slides. So there's different tools that you can use for testing. So for no code testing, you basically get the built-in previews and the live testing options that are there. So for Adelo, I demonstrated how it can be tested on the phone itself. So what I did was I scanned a QR code and I was able to run the application on my phone and do the testing. So sometimes some platforms may have companion apps. For example, there's this hybrid option called, not exactly hybrid, but you get this development tool called Expo, where you have an application called Expo Go, which you need to install in order to run tests. And of course, feedback capturing, you can embed forms into your applications and have the feedback coming in directly as well. So when it comes to full code testing, you may have methods like unit testing and integration testing that we discussed earlier. So for this, there's tools like JUnit that's there for Java, Espresso for Android, XC test for ITIS for frameworks that you will be using. So the Postman, of course, a very useful tool when it comes to integration testing, and Swagger, another one of my favorites when it comes to testing the APIs. When it comes to full code UI testing, there's tools like Selenium, Appium, Detox. So these are tools that are there. For crash reporting, you get Firebase Crashlytics, which we will discuss in a bit. And there's another tool called Sentry that you can use. And of course, when it comes to full code testing, you can do the test automation in a very advanced way. So GitHub Actions, so GitHub has this option called setting up a CI/CD pipeline. It's there under the Actions section. And you can come up with a workflow which does all the unit tests and runs all the tests that are required to pass the application. So the application will get built only once all the tests are passed, and you can do that with GitHub. And there are other tools like there's multiple other tools also that you can use for setting up CI/CD pipeline and setting up the tests. So when it comes to hybrid, you can use either the emulators or live previews. So like I said, ExpoGo is a live preview that that's given for developers who are using React Native and Expo. And Flutterflow, again, another hybrid platform. So this also you can download the code and run on your emulator, or have the live preview on your machine and run it, and you can do your tests that way. And an advantage of hybrid testing is you can, some of the tools will allow you to do debugging with the Google Chrome dev tools as well, and Flutter dev tools are there. So these are tools that you can use. And of course, based on the platform that you're using, you can use Jest, and there's another one called Cypress for testing web components. So if your application can run on a web browser, you can use Cypress to test the components and make sure that they work fine. Right. So these are some of the tools that are there. So there's plenty more tools based on whatever platform that you use. So you can identify what works for you and you can work with them. Right. So next we have another demonstration that I will be doing. So with the timing, I will have to go a little bit fast on this. But this is one of the most important testing methods that you will have. And that's using Firebase Crashlytics, right? So Firebase Crashlytics essentially is a service that has been offered by Firebase. And by integrating Firebase Crashlytics to your application, you can identify how many crashes are going to get reported in your application, right? So how many of you, so let's have a raise of hands. How many of you all have downloaded an application from a store and had it crashing on you when you try to do some kind of interaction? That just closing out of nowhere. Anyone seen that? So can we have a raise of hands? It sometimes happens. And yeah, there's a message saying that it's really frustrating, of course. And that's the reason we use Firebase Crashlytics to make sure that we have a record of how many crashes are there, right? So without further ado, let's move on to the demonstration. And let me move on to that screen, which I have prepared. Right, so for Firebase Crashlytics, develop, but
we lost the connection. Sorry, we lost you. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So one of the first things that need, can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Now,
okay.
Yes. You can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So one of the first things that you're going to have to do is create a project on Firebase once the application that you're developing is done. So you can give a project name over here. So let's say my crash project. And let's press continue. So you can enable Gemini, where you can get assistance as well. And one of the more important things is you will be prompted whether you want to integrate Google Analytics to your project. So it's a recommended thing that's given. So definitely make sure it's enabled, and you can continue to create your project. So you choose the account that you're working with and create the project. So this might take some time. So while it creates the project, I will just go through the documentation that's there. So from the Firebase dashboard itself, you will get the links to the documentation, and based on the platform that you're working on, you can find the documentation. So this essentially gives all the instructions that you need to do. So there are some dependencies that you need to install. This dependency called Firebase Crashlytics and Firebase Analytics need to be added to your application. So I have chosen the Flutter platform for demonstrating this. So let me go to the code, and under the pub spec, you can see all the required dependencies have been added by following this, and you can run the application as expected. And after that, it gives a instruction to configure the crash handlers that are there. So this is essentially a code that you're going to be writing in order to be able to log all the crashes that are there. So essentially creating a communication between Firebase and your mobile application, because you will be running your application on the phone, right? So all the codes have been given over here. So you just need to put it into the main method. You can copy the code and put it. And for demonstration purposes, again, the documentation gives this crash simulation. So the moment, so what we are doing over here is we are having a button that's there. And with that button, you're going to, once it's clicked, we are going to force the application to crash. Right, so I will run you through the code for that. So in my main.dart file, I've added the code as they have expected, as they have given. And over here, I have added this elevated button. And in the onPress function, I'm forcing a crash over here. Right, so I have two buttons that are simulating crashes, and with that, you can force the crash. Right, so I believe our application should be ready now. Yes, it is. So from this, you can see on this page, you get Crashlytics. So what you need to do is move on to the Crashlytics page. And from here, you can get the documentation. And this is essentially the page that you will be using for coming up with the application. And of course, you need to set up Firebase. That's one of the most important things. So before we get to Crashlytics, the next most important thing is you need to create an application on Firebase, right? So we have multiple options over here: Flutter, web, Android, iOS, and all these options are there. So what you need to do is you need to click on the option that's given. And when you go through the steps, all the instructions on what you need to install will be given. And with this, you can install all the Firebase configs that are there and set up your application as required, right? And with that, you can move on to the console and work on your application. So another important thing that is needed is there's this file called Google services.json. So essentially, if you're testing for Android, you will need to put it into your Android project. And you can see if I zoom in, is it visible? No, it's not visible. So you need to put it inside the app folder of your Android application. And the Google services.json looks like this. So it's just a config that's there to establish the connection between Firebase and your mobile application. So once all of these things are done, so it can be a little bit of a lengthy process to get everything done. So there are different configs that you may have to add. So those instructions, like if something doesn't work, you can look into those things. So one thing I noticed was if your project creation gives a older version of Kotlin, it might have certain problems. So with these Gradle configs, you can actually set up the Kotlin version, and you can get your application working. So here you can see I have set the Kotlin version as 2.0.0, which is the latest version. And when you put into that, it works fine without any problems. Right. So with that, we move on to the Crashlytics part. So once the steps that have been followed, that have been given in the documentation has been followed, you can actually move on to the Crashlytics page where it will say that your application is detected. So like cooking shows, I have prepared an application already beforehand so that I can demonstrate it using that. So let me get my screen shared. So I have a Android device connected. And reload this. Yeah, perfect. So this is the application that I have, and this is built using Flutter. That's the code. That's where you saw the. That's what you saw the code for. So this is the very basic application when you start up a Flutter project. So when I press the plus button, it increases the count. But that's not important part when it comes to testing with Crashlytics buttons that I have come up with, right? So I have one button that says simulate native crash and simulate dart exception. So what's important is it shows how many crashes have occurred. So let me just simulate it by pressing one of these buttons, right? So you can see the moment I pressed it, the application crashed. And you can see over here, it hasn't really updated. So for that, sometimes you may need to refresh your screen. And let's see, you can see it has increased to 4. So let me simulate another crash. Let's open this application again. And I'm going to press the button. And with the button press, it shows the crash again. So you can see because there were multiple crashes, Android gives a warning as well. But yeah, with these crashes, it has got logged on Firebase at this point. So let me refresh. Okay, so that didn't get logged. So sometimes that is a possibility that can happen. So for that, you might need to reopen your app, and that might be when it's logged Firebase. So let's try to refresh it again. And you can see, okay, so multiple crashes that got logged during that time period, right? So like that, you can log how many crashes occur. And the most important thing is having this crash-free session percentage higher, right? So once the application is connected, this is specifically during the testing phase that you will have Crashlytics running to make sure the applications don't crash, right? So the most important thing is being as close to 100% on the crash-free sessions. With that, you can make sure that your applications are working smoothly, right? So with Crashlytics, you can get this information, and you'd ideally want to be somewhere above 97% on the crash-free sessions. And with this, you can make sure that your application is working fine, even when it goes into the goes to the hands of the users, to make sure that your application maintains quality and that it runs smoothly. And the biggest advantage of Crashlytics is it's not limited to just full code development. So Crashlytics, and it's not limited to Flutter. You can work with native development, Flutter, React Native, even in terms of hybrid platforms like Flutterflow. So Flutterflow itself has Crashlytics given as a service that you can use straight off the bat and get Crashlytics enabled on your applications. But no-code platforms like Adelo probably won't be supporting Crashlytics. So in terms of no-code platforms, you will have to use other platforms such as black box testing to make sure your application is working fine. But hybrid and full code, you can definitely integrate Crashlytics and simulate your crashes and see before you go into market. And once you go into market, if the application actually crashes, you will get your records on the Crashlytics dashboard, and you can have a track of how well your application is performing. Right. So with that demonstration is completed. So let me get back to my slides and we'll wrap up the last few slides that are there. Right. So yeah, so again, we have a small activity. So this is a 1-minute activity, and the you can log into Mentimeter and work on this. So the exercise that's going to be given to you is you need to name the types of testing that you're planning to implement, right? So there's multiple choices available and you can select multiple options from that. So you have 1 minute to do this. Your time starts now. You can log into Mentimeter and conduct this exercise. So let's see what we have in 1 minute. So I believe the 1 minute has completed now. So let's see what kind of responses we have got. Okay, so functional testing, we've got a response. Unit testing, okay, automated unit testing, that's good. So system testing, that's something everyone needs to do. Usability testing is there. Performance testing for the speed, load testing and stress testing. Private beta testing, that's good. And public beta testing. So everyone should target to do the beta testing parts as well. And black box testing is also a good place to start. And you can complete the testing. Right, so let's move on to the rest of the presentation. So when it comes to beta testing, the most important part is getting feedback, right? So methods that you can get feedback are using surveys, right? The easiest way of getting feedback is using surveys. So you can use Google Forms or like any type of form for this. And with that, you can get feedback of what your testers think. You can have the enough feedback prompts like I mentioned. So Instagram has this thing where when you shake the phone, you can actually give feedback on the problems that are there. So similar to that, you can add, it might be a button that you need to press and give feedback, but that is a way of giving feedback. And analytics and session replay tools. So Firebase Analytics, Crashlytics. So these are things that you can integrate to make sure you have a analysis on how well your application is performing. So with all of these methods, you can get feedback and analyze on how well it's working. So you can categorize, once you get the feedback, you can categorize it into clear themes, whether it's UI related issues that have been reported, whether features are missing, or whether bugs were actually identified during the session of testing. So with this, you can categorize and create issues based on that. So you can prioritize the issues and the impact and based on the impact and the severity as well. So for this, you can use tools like Google Sheets for a start if you're going with a manual testing method. And if you're working with hybrid or full code development methods, you can use a platform like GitHub, right? So for creating issues and setting the priorities and the severity, you can set it up using GitHub. Right. So for no code development, there are two tools for logging issues that are there. So for no code development, you can use tools like Trello, Google Sheets, Airtable, which is an excellent tool when it comes to getting feedback. Then for hybrid and full code development, you can use GitHub issues. GitLab has certain methods. Jira is a good project management tool, which you can allocate issues and make sure you log all your problems that are there. Trello is another thing that you can use if you're going with a right. So ideally, you can set up CI/CD pipelines as well and log the issues. Right. So have clear documentation on whatever testing that you do. So using Google Sheets or GitLab or Trello, whatever platform that you use, have clear documentation and regularly communicate these problems with the team to make sure the developers fix whatever problems that are reported. Right. So in the agile and lean process, so with the agile, you will be going according to like 1 to 2 week sprints. So every week, essentially, you can do a assessment of whether everything is working fine, and yeah, do the testing based on that. So continuous refinements is something that's important. Maintain flexible and prioritize the task list well, and continuously do the integration and deployment and based on the feedback, have and make sure it's working as expected. Right. So prioritizing the backlog. So when it comes to development, now you're working on a very tight time frame. Right. So when you're working with this time frame, you need to prioritize your tasks. Right. So like I have 3 backlog tasks, potential backlog tasks that are there. So fixing a crash on Android during a login session. That's a very critical problem that can be there. If there's crashes, your application is not going to work. So something like this would be prioritized as severe and something that's very important to be fixed as soon as possible. At dark mode support. Now that's a task that is of a very low priority. Dark mode is not important when it comes to getting to your initial release if there are more important things to do. So you can put that under low priority. Optimizing image loading on the home screen. So this might hinder the performance. So having a good speed on the image loading and all of that is important. So let's say with the timing that you have, you can focus on only 2 of these tasks that are there. If that's the case, you will need to prioritize the first one and the third one in an instance as given here. Right. So now in terms of the readiness for launch, ensure that all the essential features that you're planning on releasing to market are completed and tested as soon as possible. So make sure the app is stable and with Crashlytics and like whatever methods that you have, make sure that there's a low crash rate and that there's a very high performance. And with the feedback, you can identify if the feedback is mostly positive, that means your application is heading in the right direction. Right. So with the feedback, you can identify whether your app is ready for market. And with proper analytic integration and post-launch monitoring, you can make sure the application is working smoothly during the beta testing phases. Make sure the compliance with the Google Play and submission guidelines, privacy policy, and like all those things are ready now itself. Because if you go to do those things at the last moment, it might be right? So have all of the Google Play set up. If you're working with the Apple App Store, have the Apple App Store set up also completed by the time. But the most important thing is the main target is publishing to Google Play. So have Google Play sorted out. And finalize the App Store assets, like screenshots, of course, you can take towards the end. The icons, the app descriptions, you might need videos. So all of these assets, make sure it's ready to be put onto the store when you're publishing. So don't wait till the last moment on things like that. So once these things are done, you can identify that you're ready for launch. So a little bit of repeat from the first session. So the review process might take 2 to 7 days. So put it up for review well in advance. I'm not talking about the beta test. I'm talking about the final review. So put it well in advance. And after that 7-day time, you might be asked to do revisions, right? So make sure you have enough time to do that. So keep that buffer period enough and publish it on time. So stick to the compliance that is there, all the instructions that have been given by Google Play, and make sure all the policy guidelines are followed properly, because if you don't follow those properly, there's a high probability that your application might get rejected, right? Carefully check the store listing that you have, the screenshots that are there, whether the descriptions are accurate and all of those things. So like even for the name, like when it comes to the package name of the application and what you put on the as the name of the application might get your app rejected. So you can put a dispute and get it published, but make sure your package name and your actual app name match properly. And make sure you get the package name right the first time itself, because you can't change the package name once you publish it. And like I said, be prepared for potential revisions and monitor the developer console actively. Right. So the final wrap up and the key takeaways from the testing session. So remember, test early, test often, make sure that you know your application is working well when you're going into market. Use the right tools. So identify based on the platform that you're working with, use the right tools, and match your development method properly. So gather real feedback, involve users in testing, and make sure actual users give you the feedback to make sure everything is working fine. Prioritize and iterate properly, and prepare for publishing. So those are the things you essentially need to remember. So for the next workshop, by that point, you should be prepared for submitting your applications to the store. You should already have submitted some kind of thing. So signed bills should be ready. Have the previews ready if you have admin dashboards and things like this. Demo links should be ready to share. App Store and Play Store console should be ready. If you're hosting PWAs or anything like that, you should have that setup also done. And make sure the assets are there, like I mentioned earlier. The privacy policy should be hosted on a separate website and be ready to be added to the store. App icons should be ready. And by the next session, you should have your screenshots as well. In addition to that, get the marketing and analytics done. So keyword identification, drafting the launch plan, and making sure that there's not too many crashes, and that your events have been tracked properly, right? So these are essentially things that you need to prepare for the next workshop. And yeah, I hope so when it comes to the full code track, final release on GitHub should be ready. Test flight and internal testing should be done. CI/CD pipelines, if you're going ahead with those, have those set up. Store listing metadata should be ready. If it's the no code track, PWAs, or it should be ready for publishing towards the end. If there's any payment gateway integrations, analytics, those should be validated properly. And the shareable prototype and demo link should be ready. And ideally, you should have the file to be able to push to the store as well. Hybrid also, you should have the prototype ready. Backend endpoints, the backend should be done and integrated with your front end. End-to-end testing has to be done, and dashboards should be deployed if you have any dashboards. Right. So that essentially concludes my session. So if you all have any questions, you can go on to Mentimeter with this link and drop messages there, and I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Thank you very much, Kushan. I don't know if we have any question. So now is the moment of asking questions that you might have regarding the session. I think that it was very intense, a lot of sharing a screen, demonstration, examples. So now is the moment to put the wheels in motion and everybody work after the workshop. So any question? No? Anyone want to raise hand or type on the Mentimeter? If not, I will take advantage of the time because we already passed the time. Someone raise the hand here. We have Emmanuel. Okay. Go ahead, please. Emmanuel, if you have any question for Kushan. We cannot hear you. You are mute. No, I think that he has. No. Okay, so I was saying that just to on the benefit of time that we have left next week. So this Friday we will not have check-in call. So probably you receive already the cancellation of the call for this Friday. And next Monday we will not have a workshop. The following workshop will be on the 16th of June, but next week Friday we will have check-in. So please, in the meantime, this week, book your mentoring session, book your one-to-one, ask the questions that you have, use the form if they are very urgent. If are not super urgent, just take advantage of the one-to-one sessions that you will have. So that is this week. Next week, again, work as much as possible, take advantage of the mentor session, and we will see you all on Friday. And on the 16th, we will see you on Monday 16th for a live submission workshop. I think that we have here all the links, yes, for your reference. You also can find it on the WhatsApp group that we pin them. So I hope that help. I think that, okay. Yes, you will get the slide and recording for today's session. So we will prepare the recording and tomorrow you will get it. As usual, we will send an email and you will get a recording and the presentation. So I think that is fine. I don't know, we don't have any other, okay, sorry. I will leave you, Kushan or Banu to do the exit game, as you call it. Kushan, you are mute.
Sorry.
Kushan.
Yes. So let's move on to the exit game that we have. So the what you need to tell is, when do you see yourself launching the application, right? So let's try to answer this as soon as possible, and let's see what your answers are going to be. So you can scan the QR code and add your answers. So we have received a few answers here. Mostly planning to launch by week 4. That should ideally be the target, as there will be a review process. And yeah, hope everyone follows those timelines and gets to launching the application within the given time. Right. So that essentially concludes our session. And yeah, if you have anything, make sure you ask those during the feedback sessions. And yeah, hope you all have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kusham, for the session. I hope that everybody find it useful and helpful. And that's it. We will see you. Keep again booking your sessions, and we will see you next week on Friday for the check-in call. Bye. 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 Thank you all for joining us today.
Happy learning!